Greetings, special education colleagues, and a belated happy back to school. I'm Jim Moriarty from the Bureau of Special Education, and I'm here today with my colleague Diane Murphy from our performance office for our annual review of data as part of the Bureau's back to school webinar series. Most of today's presentation will be devoted to the changes that are on the horizon for the state performance plan and annual performance report. The SPP APR is comprised of 14 indicators, a combination of both results and compliance indicators, with results indicators requiring targets established with stakeholder input. Progress is reported each year at both the district and state level through the APR. The current iteration of the SPP APR will be submitted for the last time in February of 2021 for FFY, that's Federal Fiscal Year 2019, with 2019-2020 school year data. The SPP APR was reauthorized this month for an additional 6 years, with an extension that goes through Federal Fiscal Year 2025. On the bottom of this slide, you can see the reporting schedule. The task for us as a state is to establish both new baseline and targets for multiple indicators and sub-indicators with the input of stakeholders. In addition, the reauthorized SPP APR includes changes in both the content of some indicators and the manner in which some of them are calculated and reported. Diane will begin the process of identifying those changes.
The first indicator that has new updates from the federal government is Indicator 1, graduation rate. For the last 6 years, the Indicator 1 graduation rate has mirrored the graduation rate that is used for ESSA and for the other accountability system for all students and schools. The new requirement by OSEP is to no longer use the 4-year cohort grad rate, and instead we're using a new measurement, an annual graduation rate. That graduation rate is calculated by dividing the number of 14 to 21-year-olds who exit in a given school year with a high school diploma, divided by those exiting with a diploma, receiving a certificate of completion, reaching maximum age for services, or dropping out. Indicator 2 also changed and did also used to be the ESSA 4-year cohort other rate. It is now the annual dropout rate using that same formula as mentioned for the Indicator 1, which is 14 to 21-year-olds who drop out divided by those who exited within the school year by graduating, certificate of completion, reaching maximum age, or dropping out.
Indicator 3 addresses multiple matters related to achievement. As the numbers in parentheses indicate, what had been 8 data points has now been increased to 24. Participation and proficiency had been reported collectively for grades 3 through 8 and grade 11 in both English language arts and math, but now will be reported separately for grades 4, 8, and 11, again in both subject areas. Additionally, proficiency rates will be reported for students who take the alternate assessment, as well as the gap in proficiency rates for students with disabilities and all students. The discipline data, looking at the suspension and expulsion of students with disabilities and by race and ethnicity due to inappropriate policy, procedures, and practices, remains the same under indicator number 4.
For LRE, Indicator 5, there is a slight change. How we're actually measuring the indicator has not changed. We will still report out on the percent of students with disabilities with 80 to 100% time with non-disabled peers, 0 to 40% time with non-disabled peers, and in separate segregated settings. However, what has changed and takes effect this school year is that we used to report this measure for children ages 6 through 21. We are now reporting children who are aged 5 and enrolled in kindergarten under indicator 5. So this moves an entire group of kids out of indicator 6 and into indicator 5. Now, for this indicator, it doesn't have that great of an impact because students with disabilities age 5 enrolled in kindergarten, for the most part, are in a 5A, 80 to 100% time with non-assailed peer. So we really don't see much of an impact right away under indicator 5. However, indicator 6 is our preschool LRE data. We report that out through these where the regular early childhood program, whether it's 10 hours a week or more or less than 10 hours a week, and where are the special ed services delivered within that program or outside of that program, or is the child enrolled in a special education program, receiving their services at home or at a service provider location. However, now, instead of calculating indicator 6 preschool LRE, using all 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, which previously included those 5-year-olds in kindergarten, we will now not have the 5-year-olds from kindergarten. So it will be 3 and 4-year-olds plus any 5-year-olds who are still in preschool. This does have a massive impact on this indicator, and we will need to reset our baseline and reset all of our targets, because by moving that large group of 5-year-olds who have been in kindergarten out of this indicator, we're also removing a large proportion, nearly a third of the students out of 5A, which completely displaces how those groups are calculated and the proportions with which fall into each of those 3 groupings for the LRE for preschool.
The reporting of early childhood outcomes, or ECHO data, has not changed. I'll give you just a moment to review these components to refresh your memory. Indicator 8, the reporting of the results of the parent survey has also not changed, though there will be additional requirements related to both response rate and, quote, the representativeness of respondents.
Indicators 9 and 10 have no changes. We did implement changes to that in this current school year, in which we raised the relative risk index that targets indicators 9 and 10 from a 2.0 to a 3.0. We've done this to help align the work around disproportionate representation with the work around significant disproportionality. So the only change here is that we are only identifying districts where the RRI is greater than a 3.0. Indicator 11 has no changes from the federal government, but we are changing due to guidance received last year to our state established timeframe of 45 school days for calculating this variable.
Indicator 12, otherwise known as FAPE at 3, remains unchanged. Under indicator 13, we will continue to report matters related to transition in the same manner we have in the past. You will, however, see a reminder on this slide about the fact that a recent change in state law requires that students identified as eligible under the category of autism must have transition in place by their 14th birthday. Post-school outcomes are captured under indicator 14, looking at the areas of higher education, competitive employment, and/or post-secondary education and training. That indicator has also not changed, but there are additional associated requirements, again, around the representativeness of the survey respondents. What is a particularly significant change in the expectations and requirements of the Office of Special Education Programs in this reauthorized package is the theme of stakeholder input, most significantly from the parent perspective, and again, that looks at the, quote, representativeness of those parents who engage in the stakeholder process. Toward that end, we'll likely be reaching out to some of you, particularly those of you that have fully functioning SEPTAs, to assist us in identifying potential parents to serve as stakeholders related to this ongoing work.
We've recently concluded the CDAC desk audit. All letters have gone out. Congratulations, all districts did pass the audit this year. However, of note, we did have many more students that had to be recoded from transition in place to post-secondary transition not fully in place. The issues were twofold. The first issue is the continued concern that districts need to be writing unique and separate goals for employment, post-secondary education training, and independent living if appropriate, which means a separate page 7 for each one of those areas that does not select more than one area. Additionally, the newest problem that we found was that if a district writes a PSOG on page 6, there is a goal page required. We found many districts filling out page 6 for transition, writing a PSOG for independent living, and then not writing a page 7 goal for independent living. If it is appropriate to have a PSOG under independent living, you must write a page 7 goal page. So we need everyone to revisit this issue with their staff who work around post-secondary, because we are finding that people are filling out page 6 fully and not completing page 7 when those post-school goal statements are written.
This year, we concluded our 3-year process utilizing our cohort model, reviewing IEPs around the matter of eligibility to take the alternate assessment. The good news is that it seems as a result of the newly introduced eligibility form, we saw far fewer issues in those reviews this year than we had over the course of the last couple of years. The one issue that remains the most pervasive across districts continues to be the absence of data points relative to both cognitive functioning and adaptive functioning as well. We would like to congratulate a handful of districts whose IEPs and eligibility forms represented consistently appropriate documentation. Congratulations to those districts, and we appreciate the work of all of your staff members worthy of this recognition. Now that we've gone full circle with our reviews around alternate assessment eligibility, we'll be reviewing our data to identify an area of focus moving forward. Additionally, the Bureau is moving with plans to incorporate results indicators into our LEA determinations. Given the absence of some data related to COVID and the changes in the federal reporting requirements, that will not take place before the APRs that will be issued in 2022. What you see here is a sample of what we're proposing as a tool that we'll use to introduce results indicators to our district level APRs. In preparation for that change, we'll be seeking LEA input, and districts will be provided at some point this year with feedback based on our 2018-19 data as to how you performed on each of the results indicators and how that would potentially translate into a 3-point scale that would contribute to your district's overall determination. Again, this information will be provided this year for informational and discussion purposes only. Further information on this will be forthcoming.
The work around significant disproportionality continues. We are still required to analyze discipline data, LRE data, and identification by disability for significant disproportionality. When a district is identified with a relative risk index greater than 3.0 in the same area for 3 years in a row, the district must redirect 15% of their IDA funds toward early intervening service provision. There is a small change in the analysis for suspension and expulsion. We have previously analyzed in-school suspension rates for 11 or more days, out-of-school suspension for 0 to 10 and 11 or more days, and then total exclusions. The federal government has added a requirement to look for significant disproportionality in the use of in-school suspension for 0 to 10 days. For identification, there also has been a change. In the past, we have examined the identification significant disproportionality for the age range of 6 to 21. We are now required to analyze that for students ages 3 through 21, starting with this school year's data. That means all children in pre-K will be included in this analysis, as well as those 5-year-olds in kindergarten. The concern is that when we include children who are 3 and 4, we will be adding pre-K students to the numerator, and there are generally not the equivalent proportion of general ed pre-K students to add into the denominator. We anticipate there being an impact on our identification analysis when we add in the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds to this identification significant disproportionality study, beginning with the 2021 school year, your 10/1/2020 CDAC data.
Just to finish with a few reminders. First of all, on behalf of Andrea Burnell, our preschool coordinator, for those districts who were identified in the area of preschool LRE, there is a professional development series being provided through the Erickson Institute, which will be comprised of 3 one-hour webinars, which we think are particularly timely. Here we are in the COVID era, looking at technology, and particularly technology as that relates to matters of early childhood. So if you've not received that information from Andrea yet, you can expect that that will be provided to you shortly.
We also wanted to send a reminder that out-of-date annuals and reevaluations need to be held no later than December 5th in order for those PPTs to count as compliant within CDAC. It will still result in a citation. However, we won't be counting those citations. We will be giving the district credit for getting their annuals and reevals in line by 12/5. Please note that any PPT that is held after 10/1 will not upload from your IEP vendor. So LEAs will have to hand enter these data into CDAC. In preparation for that, we are wiping out all the data out of CDAC because we need to ensure everyone is entering all of the correct data fields for those students, because in the past you would only go in and correct red errors, and that is something we need to avoid. We need to have all of the correct data from the most current IEP reported for any student who had their annual PPT held after 10/1 in order to get that student into compliance. Additionally, the work for CT SEDS has begun. We are working fast and furious on designing with the vendor what our special education data system will look like. We do have 2 advisory groups that the department will be utilizing to reach out and get ideas and run different screens by to get some input. Those 2 advisory groups are a Director of Special Ed LEA advisory group. It was formed by the Bureau of Special Ed last year. There are 22 LEA members and 1 RESC representative. We have additionally formed a data manager advisory group. There are 14 LEA members on that advisory group. We've already started reaching out to both of these groups for input, but we wanted to let you know that 20% of all of our LEAs are on at least one of these 2 advisory groups. So 1/5 of all of our districts are involved in this development work, and we're really excited about the direction we've been going. This concludes our presentation today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Jim Moriarty in the Bureau of Special Ed. Have a good day.
Have a great year.